Shalom, friends! Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchok Moully, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Shalom, friends! Welcome to the Moully Art Studio, and we got something different for you today. Instead of me doing the interviewing, I'm going to be the interviewee. Flip the script a little bit, and this coming week is Gimel Tammuz, and Gimel Tammuz is a big day in Chabad and big day for me. The 30th anniversary of, and then that becomes question mark, but 30th anniversary of the Rebbe's passing. And I felt it was appropriate to have something Rebbe related, if you will, the Rebbe's impact on art and artists. And I thought of a few candidates, and I realized I'm a pretty good candidate myself, and I need to share my origin story at some point on the Orange Socks podcast. So I'm here with my dear friend, Elchanan Solomon, who agreed to join me and ask a few questions and go on a journey together. So let's begin.
Let's do this. Let's start with your origins. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was it like growing up?
So, Baruch Hashem, I do have a very compelling story. So my story begins in Darwin, Australia. Darwin is the official capital of nowhere. It's top center of Australia. And years ago when I was born, there was no Chabad presence. There was no Jewish presence. There was nothing Jewish. And that's where I was born. That's where I showed up. Of course, the obvious question is, what's a good Hasidic family doing in Darwin? And the answer is, we were not quite ready to be a good Hasidic family. My mother was a hippie, and that's where I showed up. And as a matter of fact, I didn't have my bris milah, until I think 3 months later or so, until we made our way down to Cairns, to a community. Like, we were very alternative. My mother's originally from Egypt, so they were traditional-ish. We'll get to that, but yes, that was the kind of Judaism we had. And I remember my early days. I don't remember this, but I remember my mother telling me about this of a Yom Kippur, that it was we left kind of the commune, everyone, and we went off into the wild. There was a creek, a river, a stream, us and God. And that was Yom Kippur. We spent the whole day. I played in the water. My mother meditated, contemplated. So that was my early youth, and that could have gone on for a long time. But my grandfather, again from Egypt, was not well, and they were living in Melbourne, and he was in hospital, and it was a long, protracted illness. And we came down from the Outback to Melbourne to be with the family. And I was a wild child. What you see now is thank God I've gotten older and a little more mature. But I was
subdued version.
This is the subdued version. I was climbing the walls, climbing trees, climbing roofs, even as a young, 3-4-year-old, wherever I was. And my mother really didn't know what to do with me. And she had gone one night. There was a rabbi visiting my grandparents' shul. My grandparents were quite involved. And the Chabad Rabbi, as a matter of fact, Rabbi Shimon Cowan, for those who know. And after the event, after the speech, my mother started talking to him and said, I have a son and this and that, and praying for my father. And they started a conversation. And by the end of the conversation, I was on my way to being enrolled in Jewish day school. And
how old are you at this point?
I was 3, 4, somewhere over there, I believe. And shortly thereafter, I was enrolled in Jewish day school, as a matter of fact, at the Yeshiva College in Melbourne. And my first day of school was the day my grandfather passed away.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your mom sent you from Darwin to Melbourne?
No, we were in Melbourne.
Okay.
We came, the whole family.
You were already living in
my mother
Melbourne.
and I.
Okay.
We were living in Melbourne, on the outskirts, Moorabbin, some spot. And she took me to school. So the first day of school was the day my grandfather passed away. And
wow, he accomplished what he wanted to accomplish.
He wanted to bring us back down. He wanted to connect us to our roots, to our Judaism. And my mother's very spiritual. And so she wanted more, and she wanted more for me as her child. And she thought, well, Melbourne suburbia is definitely not it. So where in the world could we be to have our love of nature together with our love of Judaism, our newfound love of Judaism, our growing newfound love of Judaism? And the thought was a kibbutz in Israel, a religious kibbutz, to be in nature, be with like-minded people, and that was the direction. So we gathered, we saved, paperwork, whatever it is. And for some reason, Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, we went from Australia to Los Angeles to New York. And 10 days in Los Angeles, 10 days in New York. We knew nobody.
Sorry, so your plan was to go to Israel,
through Israel.
but you went
Somehow we went
via Los Angeles and New York.
exactly, yeah. So going, the long way. And I actually remember LA. My mother took me to Disneyland, and it was so magical. I mean, for a 4-year-old, 5-year-old child, it was magical. But we didn't know anyone. We knew people who knew people who knew people through the Chabad network from Melbourne to New York. And we came to New York. We were put up by total strangers. And we were there for 10 days. As a matter of fact, it was Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, 1985. And we're there. And while we're there, people said, write a letter to the Rebbe. That the Rebbe has soul wisdom.
And this was before Gimel Tammuz.
This is 1985.
Okay.
This is like the memes. There was so much going on then. And so my mother wrote a letter to the Rebbe for a blessing for our continued journey to the kibbutz, to Israel, and so on. And the response that we got, which was verbal through Rabbi Gurner, unfortunately I don't have it in writing, was stay here for the time being and accomplish what you're here to accomplish through friends. So my mother thought, naturally, it meant for her to get remarried. And New York, still today, is the epicenter of everything Chabad, and singles congregate in New York. And so we stayed, and 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 we stayed. We ended up staying for 4.5 years, which, in hindsight, is crazy.
Well, let me ask you a question. So, how long did it elapse from the moment that your mother had this initial contact with the Chabad Rabbi up until this point? How long was that?
I don't know. I think it's a year and a half.
And within that span, she learned enough that she was willing to just listen to the Rebbe and follow what he said.
That's a really good question.
So
I suppose the answer is yes. Thank God. Yeah. I suppose I was very young, but I suppose it was impressed upon her that the Rebbe really knows what's best for you. And if you're asking a question and you get an answer, listen. But it was an open-ended answer. It was stay here for the time being. Accomplish what you're here to accomplish. So in her mind, the accomplishing was to get remarried, and so while she was working on it, we stuck around. But in hindsight, that didn't happen. And really, looking at those years, they were filled with, the most incredible spiritual, energy for me. We lived on President Street between Utica and Schenectady. This house that we stayed in for 10 days, we ended up staying in their house for 6 months. That's the Torogs, Avraham and Mashi Torog. Incredible human beings. Always open their doors to so many strangers, us included. But we ended up finding an apartment, and my mother was working as a early childhood specialist, as a preschool teacher, and we were not legal, in this country. We were tourists that continued to stay our visa, whatever it was. So it definitely was financially difficult for my mother, but as a kid, I didn't know that. Like every Shabbos morning, we would walk together.
just to clarify, because you live with your mother. It's just your mother and you.
It's just my mother and I. That was our family unit. Every Shabbos morning, she was so I was enrolled in Alei Torah. I mean, she put me in Alei Torah because, again, the Rebbe said not to learn English until 9 years old. And my mother wanted me to get an English education, but the Rebbe said, so yeah, I suppose she drank the Kool-Aid enough. It's a horrible saying, maybe, but she believed enough.
That's a lot in a year, from going to living in Darwin and having very little
to
do with
really
Judaism to going all the way to enrolling your kid in a yeshiva that doesn't teach English is a big.
It is. It's huge. The more you say it, the more I really realize, and I have to go back and have a conversation with her about her perspective. Maybe I should have her on the podcast. But so I was enrolled in Alei Torah, which learned a lot of Yiddish, and I knew very little. But I remember every Shabbos would go to 770, and even in the 80s was a huge place with a lot going on. I was a very independent child. My mother brought me up to be independent, and she'd bring me to the front of the men's section, and she'd say, "Okay, bye Zaki," which is the name she calls me. "I'll meet you after davening over here." And we had like a designated spot where we'd meet, and that was it. And I think I turned 6 when we just arrived. So for a 6-year-old going into 770 alone, and so I'm street smart enough, and I met the other 770 kids, and I worked out pretty quickly that the Rebbe would come in for davening Shabbos morning at about 10 a.m. And the Rebbe would come in from what's called Gan Eden HaTachton, the Rebbe where the Rebbe's room is, and there was an internal staircase. And when you heard the door open, you knew that was the Rebbe coming down the stairs. And so all these little kids, it'd be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, would run into the shul, the back of the shul, and go, "Shh," which was code the Rebbe's coming. And we'd stand in this narrow hallway that today, I went there recently and it boggles my mind. Two adults couldn't walk, shoulder to shoulder. You have to turn sideways. Very narrow hallway. And the kids, we would line the sides, and the Rebbe would walk through, and the Rebbe would say, "Good Shabbos, good Shabbos, good Shabbos, good Shabbos," to each one of the kids. And then the Rebbe would go daven, holy prayers, and I'd run around and make trouble, and just took in this energy. Hey Tevis was a huge holiday in Chabad with court case and books. That's, the backstories for a different time. But I was in grade 2. And someone came in and whispered into my teacher's ear. And he said, "Okay, let's finish the pasuk. We're learning a little chumash or whatever it was." He said, "Okay, guys, get your bags." And he walked us across the road to 770. He said, "Class dismissed," like 11 a.m. And it was Simchas Torah on steroids. That was the energy. And Chassidim was singing and dancing. And I remember the Pimenta band. They're like, "Just come play music." So they came and they played right in front of 770. And I was living this, And of course, the Rebbe came in later and told a sicha, and I went in there. I didn't understand much at all, but I definitely got the energy and the excitement and the vibe. And of course, my mother couldn't find me because the bus didn't drop me off, because there was no bus that day, because it was like, so eventually she found me, and but that was the kind of, it was really centered around 770, it was centered around the Rebbe. And I drank the Kool-Aid for sure, and ate the cholent. And I remember only on my birthday, because I knew enough that I didn't have enough patience and focus. But on my birthday, or the Shabbos before my birthday, I would stay for the Farbrengen, and I would climb underneath the Rebbe's table. That would do it before the Rebbe came in. Whatever kids, you'd hide, you'd climb under the table. That's it. You're locked in. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. I don't remember how long it was. And I sat underneath the Rebbe's feet, which was incredible. I didn't play with the shoelaces, by the way. I'm not one of those. But yeah, that was it. It was, and I got kosher bracha from the Rebbe, and I got dollars from the Rebbe, and it was my Rebbe. I had a real, personal relationship.
Did you ever go into Yeshivas with the Rebbe? That was before.
Never Yeshivas. I was too late for that. But every Shabbos morning, I stood there, and the Rebbe said "Good Shabbos" to all the kids. I'd like to believe, and I do believe, that the Rebbe knew who I was in that whole mix. The Rebbe said, "Stay," And so after 4.5 years, circumstance changed. Single mother's pension ran out. Things got difficult for my mother financially, and she wrote again to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, "What should we do?" And the Rebbe said, "It's time to go home." So we went back to Australia.
So we never made it accomplished what you came to accomplish.
Exactly. Even though she didn't get married during that time, and we never made it to Israel. We never made it to the kibbutz. We really marinated in this energy in Crown Heights. And by then, we went back to Melbourne, and, my mother, the hippie, lived in Crown Heights, Brooklyn in the 80s for 4.5 years. And whatever we could, we tried to find nature, but we were in the city. We came back to Melbourne. Again, we were in the city, and we went back to Yeshiva College, went back to, I joined my old class. I actually went down a grade because of the lack of learning English in Crown Heights. And from there it continued. And I actually remember thinking, my story ended at 9, because when 9 years old, we came back to Melbourne, and I kind of fit back into the yeshiva system. And so I went to the Yeshiva College. You graduate or finish Yeshiva College, went on to the Rabbinical College of Australia, called YG. for 2 years, and then I wanted to come to North America to learn. And there were three main yeshivas to choose from: Aleitera, Montreal, and Morristown. And I chose Morristown simply because it's in the forest. It's out in the wild. I had remembered their festivals, the Renaissance Fair. My mother would always take me there every year. So like, still nature was, that alternative, if you will, lifestyle was there. But I did 2 years in Morristown. I actually went back to Melbourne, Australia, to be a shliach, this bacher shlichus, like a mentor, a big brother. My old principal, Rabbi Glick, who I was, again, as I said, a wild child and a troublemaker. One of my greatest compliments is that he invited me back to be, a mentor to the younger boys. And throughout all this process, I thought, we came to Crown Heights. We could have gotten a blessing, could have got $1. And, as the Rebbe said to so many people, Baruch Havatzlacha, Askel Atzion, go on with your journey. Why did the Rebbe want us to stay for 4.5 years? And the reason definitely wasn't for my mother to get married. And Baruch Hashem, she got remarried when I was 15 years old. And I always thought, like, well, so what's it for? What did Rebbe have in mind? And I thought, for me to be a shliach, like that's the ultimate that I could possibly do, to share my love of Judaism with others. And so I continued my yeshiva journey and got smicha in Venice, Italy. Ran around the world. Joined Chabad, ran around the world in Russia and Scotland and India and wherever it is. And then met my wife in Toronto. We got married in Toronto and did 1 year of shlichus, 1 year of kollel back in Melbourne. And then we both wanted to go in shlichus. And for some reason, I didn't think I could be, I didn't know how to lane. I still don't know how to lane. So like, because I didn't know how to lane, I felt, I can't start a Chabad house myself, because you got to do everything. And part of everything is starting a minyan and knowing how to lane. And I couldn't do that. Therefore, that's not available to me. So I looked for a job as, a number two for someone else. And we actually made a video CV way back before this is 2004. We interviewed people that I had worked for, I had impacted, people that my wife had worked for, she had impacted, and we titled the video "To Live the Dream." And we showed it around and so on. The irony is that we got hired by Rabbi Mendy and Malki Hurson, and they didn't watch the video. So I sat them down and said, "You got to watch the video." But that was it. To live the dream. This is the ultimate to be shluchim, to share a love of Judaism with others. And I thought, okay, this is what I have in mind. This is my life. This is my purpose. I'm living my purpose. And then, I'm still a child of hippies, thank God. And still creativity ran through me, and a wild streak ran through me. And that, in nature, I was definitely the same, but different. I had my own uniqueness.
Yeah. It seems to me, looking backwards, hearing this story, how that Rebbe wanted to take this hippie child and infuse it with 4 years of Crown Heights and end up with a hybrid.
Yeah.
With this person that has the shlichus and has the nature and the hippiness and all this. So you ended up in shlichus, working in New Jersey under Rabbi Hurson. Can you tell me a little bit about how that was? How long were you there? Tell me about your experience as a shliach.
So we were hired as the youth directors together. We did Hebrew school, we did teens, we got involved in like the community program, holiday programming. I was, the number two guy. Rabbi Hurson had, a lot of his responsibilities. Batsheva got involved in the education side. They had a preschool. Malki's an educational expert, so Batsheva definitely learned a lot under her. And it was small town America. Just helping people who were in the greater.
Where was this?
Basking Ridge, New Jersey, which is an hour out of New York. Some people did commute to New York, so it was definitely not a Jewish bastion, but the Yidden Jews and connecting and bringing Jews closer to Judaism, through the standard Chabad house model.
How long were you there for?
So we were there. We were supposed to be there forever. That was, that was
the plan.
That was the plan. And then my creative output, because I realized I needed a creative outlet, was photography. That was my first love. As a child, I was into photography. I felt constrained that I couldn't paint, I couldn't draw. So I never went that direction. I always went, to photography. Photography was my form of expression. And the first digital SLR that came out, professional digital camera, was a Canon Rebel, whatever it was, and I bought that for just under $1,000, and that opened up my creative process because with film you take a photo and you don't see what you did until you develop it later, and I felt very constrained. Every time you press the shutter, it cost another something. So so I got into photography. That was like a side thing.
Right, you're doing it as a hobby. It was.
Yeah, completely on the side.
I'm curious, what sort of photography did you do?
A lot of nature. Fall over there is beautiful, the rivers, the streams, and then family portraiture of my own children. I got a lot of beautiful photos of my children, other people's families. I did photography and video for the Chabad, for their events and so on. But at some point I felt photography was too real. It was too, what you see is what you get. And it's really a reflection of me, not a reflection of photography. There's so much that could be done, but I wanted more. And I bumped into this process called silkscreen, where you take a photo and you transform it to a screen and you can create a piece of art. And it blew my mind, like, oh my God, I could do this. Without knowing how to paint, I could still make a painting. And I tried and I failed, and I tried and I failed, and I tried and I failed. And eventually I succeeded. I made my first piece of art on a little 8x8 inch canvas.
What was it?
It was of a chassid on a phone, I believe, when like a contra on a public payphone. And it was like a contrast between the new and the old, the contemporary and the traditional, and how they clash, how they interact. And I just kept going. I mean, from there, this silkscreen process intrigued me, and I made more and more art, really about my love of Judaism, Judaic elements. It's definitely in the early years inspired by Andy Warhol, pop art. So my early work was, Jewish pop art. And I'd go to galleries, even before I went to galleries in like creative little towns and so on. And we were in a little town, Lambertville, New Hope, on the Delaware River. And I found this gallery and I just loved it. And I'm like, I went and talked to the guy and showed him my work. He's like, oh, I would love to have you in here. Come. So all of a sudden I'm being shown in a gallery. And I got some early press. They dubbed me rabbi by day, artist by night, because that was what it was. Rabbi by day, all my responsibilities, and came home, put the kids to bed and so on. And then I went off to paint. I got some more press and they dubbed me the Pop Art Rabbi. And, it was wonderful. It was humming along. And I felt like this beautiful harmony between my responsibilities as a rabbi, that this is my calling, this is my purpose of what I need to do in life, but also my creative outlet and, creating my own art and sharing it and so on.
So it seems like you have like this balance, right? It seems like you talk about like this harmony between the two things. So at what point, what prompted you to then kind of say, let's go full into the art?
So it was all balanced until it wasn't. Until at some point I realized that all my emotional energy was going towards the art, and I was still doing my job, but I was dialing it in to a certain degree. All my passion was going towards the arts, and less so towards the shlichus. And I got to the point, it came to a head, and I realized I needed to choose one or the other. We've been already in Basking Ridge for about 9-10 years. And of course I knew which one's more important. Being a shliach, sharing love of Judaism with others, art is nice, it's an expression, and I turned to my mentor, my rabbi, and I asked him, maybe I should stop painting. It's getting away in the rabbi stuff. And what he shared with me really was a shift that changed, everything. And he said, the question isn't should you paint or not. The question is, how do you take the gifts that God gave you and impact the world in a meaningful way? And it gave me pause. It let me think, so what are the gifts that God gave me? And art definitely was, and I was selling and doing and creating, and it evolved. It went from pop art to what I called, post-pop, and I got into abstracts, and, my creative energies were growing. And it got to the point, actually, I couldn't, so many signs, looking backwards, there were very many signs. I went to the Ohel many times and asked the Rebbe for guidance.
Many signs.
Signs that really I should make this shift. Okay. When I talk about it, I swear. Long story short, that But one of them is I went to the Ohel on my birthday, and which is Chafel, right, right at the end of the Hebrew year. And I said, Rebbe, give me a clear sign. Give me a clear sign. And I came out of the Ohel, and two people that I know a little bit were having a conversation about Jewish art. And I joined the conversation, and it kind of like dissipated right after that. But like here, there were two people talking about art. And shortly thereafter, Rabbi Herson, who was really an incredible boss, gave me an ultimatum. He said, you're in or you're out. And simply because he was hiring me for my soul, he was hiring me for 24/7.
Is this
Uh,
something you spoke with him about, or is this something that
we
he kind of noticed that you were
he
less
noticed, we
into it?
spoke about it was a long journey, and he knew about it, and they knew about it, and I couldn't do both. I just couldn't physically do both. And because they gave me the ultimatum, it forced me to say, well, I have to choose, and I choose the arts.
So,
And
do you feel like you left Shlichus to pursue art? What's your relationship with that decision, even now looking back?
it's a great question. So I believe that this is what the Rebbe wanted of me. Going back full circle. What did the Rebbe see in this little kid? Stay here for the time being and accomplish what you're here to accomplish. What the Rebbe need of us is that I believe the Rebbe didn't see me, as just as another youth rabbi, as another shliach in small town America. That my uniqueness, what I could bring to the world, was something else. And the way I like to look at it is the way we frame different ways of categorizing mitzvahs. One way of categorizing mitzvahs is mitzvah she'efshar lasas aidei cherem, a mitzvah that you can hire someone else to do on your behalf, and mitzvah she'i efshar lasas aidei cherem, a mitzvah that you cannot hire someone else to do, you have to do yourself. And one of the mitzvahs you can hire out is it's a parent's responsibility to educate their children, to give them chinuch, but you send your kids to school, you hire someone else to do it. But everyone has, tefillin is a mitzvah, there's certain mitzvahs that you can't get anyone else to do for you. And I felt that my art, my expression was something I couldn't outsource. I couldn't give that someone else to do. So we left. It was difficult. It was an upheaval for my family, really. But we left. We left with the understanding. We tried to stay on for a year, and um, with the understanding, yeah, this is what I'm meant to be doing. This is what God wants of me. This is what the Rebbe wants of me. So did I leave Shlichus in the technical sense? Yes. I got an email 6 months later or so from the central office, and we've been informed that you're no longer working for Chabad Basking Ridge, and we're taking you off the roll. And that hurt. That really hurt. That stung. I initiated it. I caused it to happen. And the young Chaim Mushka working at the desk in 770, 788 did what he was supposed to do. But do I believe I'm on shlichus? Yes, I believe this is what the Rebbe wanted of me. This is what the Rebbe saw in this 5, 6-year-old running around Crown Heights. That's why the Rebbe wanted me to stay, is that I have something to contribute, to give that nobody else can do. This confluence of hippie-ness and that energy and that creativity and that wildness, together with marinating as a child in 770 in Crown Heights and going through the yeshiva system, what came out the other side is me and my creativity. And really, my creativity is a reflection on Yiddishkeit, on Judaism, on Hasidic. Like, I haven't learned anything different than anyone else in yeshiva. If anything, I learned a little bit less. And spent more time in the Fabrengens than actually learning from the books. But bringing these two worlds together is my unique gift of communicating through my art.
It's interesting because I think, hearing you say how you didn't really leave shlichus, but you rather switched from one form of shlichus to a different form of shlichus. It's interesting to me because I think there's this idea of the mesiras nefesh, the sacrifice that goes into being a shliach, and we all know what shluchim all over the world sacrifice to become shluchim. But in a certain way, you sacrificed a certain status, a certain feeling, a certain ego that can come to you as I'm a shliach. I have a card. I go to the kinnis, and you sacrificed for a way of doing shlichus that is just as important, and just having you're having this impact, but you had to sacrifice a little bit of that way that you saw yourself.
100%. I'll even, it's not just as important, but even more important. The Rebbe has an Hayom Yom. There's a Hayom Yom, and a shliach somewhere introduced me with this Hayom Yom, that the Rebbe says that if someone has the capacity to polish diamonds and they spend their time baking bread, they're doing themselves and society a disservice. So I read that.
I've heard the words upgam in creation. There's a fault in creation because you're not using that gift that Hashem gave you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there is Mesiras Nefesh, and my oldest son Mendel keeps reminding me, that we're not on shlichus and that we should be on shlichus, and I'm on shlichus. I'm working directly for the Rebbe. I got my mashpiyim. I have people that I turn to for advice. But this is my purpose in life. This is my goal. And as you said, in creation, when I talk about, I give speeches, I travel a lot with my art, and I talk about, God, the ultimate creator. And when we make Kiddush on Friday night, it says, Asher bara Elokim lasos. God created lasos to do. God created a perfect world and then created us. A perfectly incomplete world and created us. And that each of us have one part of creation that's incomplete, and that's why we're here to complete it. So that idea of a pagam, a blemish in creation, that if you're busy baking bread, which is necessity for survival, it's a necessity but if you have the capacity to do something else, let someone else bake bread. Let someone else do that. And I'm very grateful for the journey that I've had, all the steps along the way, of being, a shliach in a formal capacity for 10 years. I think that's informed a lot of my work and given me guidelines, but parameters, perspectives, which very much influence my work. So thank God, thank God for my time, my 10 years. Actually, thank God for every step along my journey, really, that brought me to where I am. And what I'm doing is unique, is mine and mine alone.
Yeah, I hear that, and I wanna kind of take off from that point. And I know you speak about how through art you can help bring Mashiach. Can you tell me a little bit about how do you do that? How does art help bring Mashiach?
Yeah, if people ask me, all right, so what are you trying to achieve? It's like, bring Mashiach. And they laugh. But really, the Rebbe said, like, this is the last avodah, the last work is to bring Mashiach. And with everything, I mean, it's what I can reach, the people that I can reach, the impact that I can have as an artist is greater than I could have had as a youth director. And I've evolved in my artwork, and hopefully we can talk about that evolution, because I don't stick to any one medium. It's about the concepts to me. But I'm really excited about public art, murals, sculptures. I have my whole Menorah series and others. And the way I see it, and I want to start an organization called Jewish Public Art. And really the purpose or the mission statement takes from the story of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov said, the Baal Shem Tov went up to, the story is, or the letter is, the Baal Shem Tov wrote it down and shared that it's historically accurate. The Baal Shem Tov went up to heaven and met with Mashiach and said, Me'emasai kasimar, when are you, Mashiach, when are you coming? You're late, when are you coming? And Mashiach answered, Likishiyafutsu manasecha chutza, when your wellsprings spread out. The wellsprings of Chassidus spread out into the world. And I'm taking that literally, taking Jewish art, chutza, out into the world. So creating public art menorahs, that there's public art menorahs since the 60s, I believe, that have a big push of the Rebbe, and some of them are really beautiful, but some of them are utilitarian. And part of my goal is to get really beautiful, interesting sculptures that are also art, to create Jewish art outside, chutza, and that's my way of bringing Mashiach.
Do you have an example of a story of something of the impact that you've had through your art?
I was asked that once on stage and I blanked out. Um, you know, the beauty is, like, in a way, no. There's no one, like, oh, because of that, my life changed. But I've been told that I allowed other people, I gave other people permission to do. That definitely, I'm not the first Hasidic artist. There's Handel Lieberman and there's Zalman Kleiman. Those are the greats. And then there's Baruch Nachshon, who had tremendous kiruvim from the Rebbe. But the Rebbe really got involved in his creative work, and the Rebbe told him that he's a tikkun, a rectification of all the negatives of art. And then, of course, Michal Mochnik. But I'm a younger generation, and my pop art, I believe my Jewish pop art was, revolutionary within the Hasidic world, and I continue to push boundaries. There is someone who I met at the JLI retreat years ago, and we've stayed in touch throughout the years. And at the time, his wife was not Jewish, and just recently she completed the process of Giur, and he calls me. I'm one of his rabbis when he needs advice, and when he needs square questions, he asks his square rabbi, and when he has other questions, he turns to me. So yeah, I think as an artist, I have impacted. But the beauty of it is that I mean, this piece, orange socks. Let's talk about orange socks. Of course, yes, I'm wearing my orange socks. This piece has had a huge impact. So by extension, I've had that impact. So what is this piece? This piece is a line of rabbis, all marching to the beat of the same drum. It was, I mean, divine providence, the way Hashem, planned things out, is that this piece, it was really a throwaway. I had a bigger piece titled Williamsburg, and it was about the conflict or the intersection of the Hasidic community and the hipster community, and the bridge in the middle. And I had a little boy with ice cream, in the Hasidic community, looking out at the hipster community, and that was me. I feel comfortable in these two worlds. That there's a clash. There was a clash. The bike lanes in New York. There was whatever issues, but I felt comfortable in these two worlds. And so I had different characters, different Hasidic characters, different hipster characters, and these are one of my characters. These two guys walking together, and I just had this canvas, 10 inches by 10 inches tall, 30 inches wide. And I just looked at it and, like, this idea of this repetitive nature of these guys all silhouetted out. And then one guy wearing orange socks. And, like, okay, that's my self-portrait. That's me. That I'm definitely, on the journey together with everyone else, very much in line with what God wants, with Chabad and Chabad culture and what the Rebbe wants. But at the same time, I'm personalizing my journey. That this is me. And the amazing thing is that this piece really touched a chord. A lot of people identified with it, either whether they're, like, actually wearing orange socks or colorful socks or whatever it was. The story is true. Yes, I did wear orange socks at my wedding. And a curator in Israel, I'm blanking on her name. She found this piece online, and she asked me, could she use it? Noah Leah Cohen, who has a Hasidic gallery in almost Mea Sharim, that way, the art shelter gallery. And she's a educator, advanced education, higher education, and she talked about this in her lectures. And again, in Israel, the dichotomy between the religious, the Orthodox, that has a whole different set of layers of meaning. But she actually wanted to create, there was a Jerusalem Biennial, it was a 2017 Jerusalem Biennial. And she created a whole body of work called Pop Orthodox, the confluence, and in Hebrew they called it humor shachar, black humor, like black hat humor. Being able to find the lighter side and the more creative side of the Orthodox community in Israel. And this was a signature piece. This was like the poster child of that show. And she asked me, could we recreate this little piece in big? And I said, of course, yes. So we recreated it. Each individual was like 6 feet tall on a huge wall, a huge yellow wall. And of course, one guy wearing orange socks. And I came, with my older two boys to Yerushalayim. It was Sukkot, and we had the opening, and it blew my mind how people were reacting and interacting with the piece. Because until then, to me, it was about create something, and look at this. It has meaning. It's talking. It conveys joy. It conveys, the explosion of energy of mitzvot. But the way people interacted with it, the way people, again, religious, non-religious, got there, wanted to take a photo, not even a selfie, someone else get a photo of them with it, that they want to become part of the piece. And that marinated with me for a long time, for a while, but I realized, and that was a shift. There was another shift in my work, that it's not just about me creating something, but it's, come, let's create something together. And through that, there's greater meaning for both of us. So again, that's a reflection of my, Chabad shliach, process. Come, let's do a mitzvah together. Come, let's find meaning together. Not like let me put on you my meaning, but come, let's discover together. And yeah, the podcast is the Orange Socks podcast. I keep coming back to it. We actually had. Maybe we should bring it back, but what we called the Orange Socks Collective, and we did one performance. I had a solo show at the Jewish Museum of New Jersey, a small museum upstairs from one of the old synagogues in Newark, and we did a performance piece. And there's this guy, Yaakov Jaffe, and he's got an incredible story. He was a contemporary dancer, not religious, an incredible contemporary dancer. You know him?
Yes.
Amazing.
We're in yeshiva together.
Really?
Yeah.
So the Juilliard, I didn't even know what schools he went to, but he was top of the line, contemporary dance. And when he became frum, when he became religious, he couldn't find that parallel, that connection point, and he stopped dancing. And of course, Chassidim dance, but we kind of shuffle, there's no, it's not dance. Well, it's not contemporary dance, that's for sure. And I think I did a show out somewhere. I don't know where his mother lives, but somewhere. And I met his mother, and she's like, I love your story. I love the way you've found, that I don't have a contradiction between my Judaism, my Chassidic self, and my artistic self. That to me, they overlap and they really complement each other. But her son couldn't find that. And I said, I gotta meet him. I gotta call him. I gotta interact with him. And somehow, I'm getting old. I'm forgetting. Somehow Dalia Schusterman was involved in this. I forget her music, whatever it was. But I reached out to him and I said, hey, we're gonna, and so this Orange Socks Collective was Dalia Schusterman, an incredible drummer, musician, Mirla Rosenberger, who's also another female incredible musician, and Laura Melankoff, I believe.
Melankoff.
Yeah. Yep. And so those three musicians, that they played, Yaakov danced, and I created like a backing of Orange Socks. And really what it was, and I got to find the video to it, is that it was the outline of all these people, and they were kind of like blank. And Yaakov tried to fit into person number one, and it just didn't work. And the music was like edgy and difficult. He tried to fit into person number two, and it didn't fit. And then, person number three was this outline with orange socks. And like all of a sudden he felt at home, and I sprayed orange socks on his socks, and he came alive, and the music came alive, and I painted like a madman, and this explosion of energy of all of us, and the music, and him and me, and it all came together, that finding yourself within, and then he eventually came back and he was like at peace in his space in the orange socks. So this orange socks has touched me a lot, and to answer your question, yeah, I think it's touched a lot of other people.
I think it's such an important message for the world, that being batal, being a part of something greater, being a religious Orthodox Jew does not need to take away your individuality, and to find that self-expression within the greater movement, within the greater ideology is such an important message. And I think so many people that struggle with Orthodox Judaism is because they haven't found this way, this balance to be able to dress like a chassid but yet put on their orange socks.
Right.
I wanted to ask you a question. I know that art is a very fulfilling, but it's also very tough. It's a very tough career. So, I want to know what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going?
My bills, my responsibility. This is my full time. I do art full time. I'm blessed that I do art full time. Um, but yeah, I have so much to say. I have so many ideas, so many things to do. I feel like I don't have enough days left in my life to create all the things that I already have in my mind. Forget about all the things that I'm thinking of. So it's not easy. It's really not easy on my wife, to be super honest. But this is why God put me on this earth. My whole backstory, like almost, as I say, Asher bara Elokim lasos, that God put us on this earth for a reason. I deeply believe that. I deeply believe that the only reason that I exist is to create this art. This is my mission. This is God's mission, and this is the mission that the Rebbe honed in and gave me, to create art. So why do I continue? Because this is life. The life wouldn't be there'd be no purpose to life otherwise. And yes, I'm a husband and a father. I I wear other hats, but fundamentally, this is what I'm meant to do. And I have so many ideas. I have so many things that I want to achieve and bring out to the world. So many ideas that, yeah, I get down, I get depressed. I fall off my horse and then I get back up again. Yes, I'm at the moment heavily motivated.
Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about your creative journey. Tell me a little bit of how your art evolved over the years. You said you started with a pop art and then you've moved on to more interactive sort of pieces. Tell us a little bit about, that process, that journey, how it has evolved, where you started versus where you are now, and just all the steps in between.
Yeah, thank you. So something that I've spoken about on this podcast, is that I've come to this realization that there are three basic elements to all expression, in my book. And number one is what you say. Number two is how you say it. And number three is how you share it with the world. And to me, I'm very much about what you say, the subject matter. And the subject matter is Chassidus, is Judaism, is a love for Judaism. One of my rabbis that I turn to, again, someone who has deeply changed my life, is Rabbi Yossi Paltiel. You know that. If I'm quoting someone, I'm quoting Rabbi Yossi Paltiel. And he had a Farbrengen. It was a Yud Aleph Nissen Farbrengen. You can look on, it was back when he was on yeshiva.net. If you go to yeshiva.net and search 11 Nisan, Rabbi Paltiel will come up. And it's an exploration of the historical journey of the Rebbe's 10 mitzvahs. That God gave us 613 mitzvahs. The Rebbe said, here are 10 starter mitzvahs. Anyone getting started, begin with these. And really what it was about is the critical mass of people doing a new mitzvah, say tefillin, during 67, just before the war, Shabbos candles in the 80s. Every single one of these had a real, in the world effect on the world, specifically about, Eretz Yisrael and Shleimus Haaretz, the land of Israel and the safety and security of the land of Israel. One example from that, and every so often I go back and I listen to that again, but one example from that is the Baba Sali, which is a tremendous tzaddik, would predict every year, every time that there was a war in Israel, and he predicted accurately each war, the Yom Kippur War and the Six-Day War and whatever else. And in 1982, I believe, or whatever it was, somewhere there, the Baba Sali said that there's going to be a war in Eretz Yisrael. And there was no war in the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. There was the war in Lebanon. And at the end of the year, they came to him and said, what happened? Did you lose your edge? And he said, how was I to know that Lubavitcher Rebbe would make the mitzvah of, and I think it's Shabbos candles, and push the war from Israel into Lebanon? So here's one tzaddik talking about another tzaddik, saying that the act of so many people doing this mitzvah actually physically pushed the war from the borders from within Israel to outside of Israel. And listen to that class. Maybe I'll link to it in the show notes. That had profound impact on me. And this idea of the mitzvahs that we do has a real impact. Like the actions that we do really actually do affect this world. And I feel like it's something that we've learned, in the Chabad circles for forever, but it hit me. It was like so visceral. And a lot of my work from then, and that was like at the post-pop stage. So pop art, this is, one of my pop art pieces. You have eight Torahs, and then eight, Western, Ashkenazi Torahs, and then one Sephardi Torah. That's part of the pop art series. And post-pop was taking one of these and creating this explosion of energy. That every mitzvah we do creates this huge explosion of energy. So
similar to kind of this one, right?
Similar to kind of this one. So the shofar. Shofar is one of my ongoing series. Every year, just before Rosh Hashanah, I paint a shofar, attempting to depict that energy of the new year. Every time there's a new year, we get a new godly energy into the world. And actually within that, I discovered, again, looking at all these different forms, it's not about, to me, it's what you say, not how you say it. There was Pokemon Go. Hopefully you remember that. There was Pokemon Go that through the phone, you could look and you could see these Pokemon characters or whatever. And it was a craze. I mean, it went viral and people like walking around, and through the naked eye, you don't see anything, but through the phone, through that app, through that lens, you would see these Pokemon characters and you had to interact with them in whatever form. And to me, that was like, oh my God, that's such a great mashal. It's a great way of looking at spirituality. It's here, but we don't see it. And through the lens, we can see it. So I created a series, again, of the Rebbe's 10 mitzvahs, those 10 mitzvahs. And I don't have any of them here because they're all sold and out in galleries and elsewhere. And there were two pieces, and again, I'll try to link to it, two paintings of the exact same thing. So the Torah, and one is a Torah on a blank background. Nothing else, just a white background on the Torah. And the other one is a Torah full of this explosion of energy and mitzvah, and all 10 of them. And I created and I filmed creating that explosion. And I worked with your friend. Yeah. You remember that?
I remember, yeah.
Exactly. To create virtual reality. That when you hold up your phone, or you hold up your tablet on the blank one, in the phone itself, you see the creation of this one. You see that explosion of energy. So the one that's complete, what you see is kind of Mashiach times, where we see godliness. And the other one, which was blank, when you look at it, but through the right lens, you saw that explosion of energy. And
I remember when you told me about this idea, that I love the concept of having something that's there. It was always there, but you need to be able to see it. You need the right lens to see it. I love that. The augmented reality concept was great.
So I have another augmented reality concept that I love talking about that I haven't yet brought to life. And of course, my Overflowing Blessings series.
My personal favorite.
Good. One of my original thoughts for this was this idea of, and this is the time when the Amazon Go, there were these Amazon buttons, these smart buttons, and you put it near your laundry, and whenever you're running out of laundry detergent, you program it, and you press that button, and it would, deliver, next month's thing. And my idea of getting these buttons, and of course it works with an app as well, that every time you do a mitzvah, every time someone does a mitzvah, you press that button. And what happens? Oh, so there's two parts, So what happens is we'd have a huge cup, an 8-foot cup in a museum somewhere, that every time someone presses that button, a little drop of paint falls into a bucket above the cup. And around the world, everyone doing these mitzvot, it would fill up that bucket until that bucket would, on a hinge, would just automatically overflow over the cup and then fill up again. And I wanted to put it in a round room where, because it's connected, it's geotagged anywhere in the world with this app or with the buttons, anywhere in the world that someone is doing a mitzvah. And to have a map of the world that these little LED lights would flash when someone did a mitzvah in real time in these places. And also to have an EKG machine that like measured the, like instead of the heartbeat, it would measure the heartbeat of the mitzvot and call that Am Yisrael Chai, that we're alive by the mitzvot. And actually, the first part of it was augmented reality, that when you do a mitzvah, you take the app and you do a mitzvah and you drop that mitzvah in space. So you drop it here, and it would be, that was actually inspired by tefillin for Yitzi. Rabbi Yitzi Horowitz is still struggling with ALS, and a group of boys, a group of Bachrim said, let's do a campaign. Let's get 60,000 people putting on tefillin in merit of Yitzi, because mitzvahs do make a difference. But how do you track it? How do you quantify it? And my thought was, get an app, make this app, that anytime someone did tefillin, you go to someone in downtown LA and you put in tefillin. So you open up the app and put in tefillin. Why? For Yitzi. So you have who, the boy signed up, or the person doing the mitzvah, what, the mitzvah of tefillin, when, it's time stamped, where, it's geotagged, and why, tefillin for Yitzi. And then you could start seeing, the big data of where in the world mitzvahs happened. And if you do this, I remember growing up in Australia, we'd go on hikes out in, not quite the Outback, but, in the middle of nowhere, and these, our counselors would say, no one in the history of the world has ever done a mitzvah here. Come, let's do a mitzvah. Say 12 psukim. Let's say a blessing. Let's daven mincha. Imagine that we dropped, those things in that space, and a year later, or 6 months later, another group comes along and looks and goes, oh my God, there was a mitzvah done right here. And to me, it excites me, using technology, using whatever tools we have to communicate this idea of the power of a mitzvah.
Yeah, kind of like a geocache.
A geocache for mitzvahs. And so it's still out there. Friends, who wants to partner with me? Who wants to make this happen?
Okay, so we did the pop art section, then we moved on to the post pop, right?
Yep.
And now we're talking a little bit more about the interactive stuff, things like the geocaching and the overflowing blessings.
So the overflowing blessings, the way it is now, is it starts as a blank canvas. A blank is silver cup, and I invite a community. I work with communities, and everyone gets a small cup of paint, and they share one thing that they're grateful for. And I offer 10 colors, which is the plurality of potential. According to the Kabbalah of color, according to Rabbi Yitzchok Ginsburg. So I offer the 10 colors: Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus. It's all on my website. You can find it. But everyone would connect with the color, think about one thing they're grateful for, and pour it over the top of the cup. And through the act of everyone pouring, we would create this beautiful piece that would stay in that community as a celebration of their collective gratitude. So that's one of my interactive pieces.
Is this the only size you do?
No, it comes in 6 different sizes. So the smallest is 18-inch, that maybe would fit in this box, and the largest is 8 feet tall,
wow, which
is what I call brachas l'mayla min hateva. 7 is order, and 8 transcends order. Nature, 7's nature, and 8 is beyond nature. Hanukkah is beyond nature. So the blessings should be beyond nature. Pouring lots of blessings. Symbolism makes it.
I love the intention in every little one of these details. I can see you put a lot of intention to every single aspect of it.
Yeah, very much so. And this idea of what you say, how you say it, but how you share it with the world. This idea of it is a conversation with other. It is a conversation about getting other people into the process, or sharing it in a way that other people can see it. It's not just about me and my creativity. It's about us and starting a conversation and hopefully impacting people's lives through this conversation about the power, the beauty of mitzvot.
That's amazing, man. So we went from somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Darwin to, getting connected with Judaism, to living in Brooklyn, and then becoming a shliach, and now you are changing the world and affecting people through your art. I love the journey. I love how you went, even within the art itself, how you've gone from something, you started with one way and then you've evolved into something so much more complex and interactive. And I'm very, very excited to see where it takes you next. It's good stuff.
Thank you. Well, next is public art menorahs. We did one, again, an interactive piece where you touch the lights and it lights up. That was Living Lights 2 years ago already. And I'm working on a version that, a for sale version that people can take and connect with and put up in their communities. I have an October 7th memorial. October 7th touched all of us. And that's a very powerful piece that I want to bring to the world. Mount Menorah, there's an endless list of ideas. So what keeps me alive? What keeps me going? Yeah, this is it, knowing that this is my mission. This is my contribution to the world. So thank God.
It's a big contribution too.
Thank God. So the way I end all the podcasts is I ask my guests. So I'll ask you to ask me. What advice do you have for young creatives to find their orange socks?
Okay, so what is it? What's your advice for young creators?
So I thought about this because I knew this question was coming. Is try and fail. Try and fail. Find something that you love, and it's good to fail. It's good to not be perfect. I think what held me back as a child, I remember not wanting to doodle in the margins of my Gemara because older me would make fun of younger me because these drawings were like not good enough, which, you know, made no sense, but I was holding myself back. So it's try and fail. Fail is a beautiful part of doing, and then find your passion, find what excites you, what keeps you up at night, what you're thinking about, you know, late at night. And try everything. So many forms of creativity, so many forms of expression. Find your people. Part of the idea of this podcast is to, you know, to share with the younger generation or the young at heart, but to find a community, find like-minded people. Really, part of the purpose of this podcast is to fabrang, to have a conversation with lots of creatives and talk to others, inspire others, connect, find your people, don't do it alone, and try, fail, keep trying, and eventually you'll find your voice completely. So that's
amazing,
it.
Man. I love it.
Elchanan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח